And so while they're going back and forth, Either basically said, if y'all don't shut the hell up, I'm killing all of y'all right now. So they turn around. So this episode opens with Leo and B kind of tailing Watson. And so they're standing in the hallway of what appears to be this hospital. And they're waiting, I guess, for him to come out so they can go in to see, you know, what's going on. And so, of course, while they're waiting, Leo can't stop talking about the night before and about how it only lasted 15 minutes and, how it wasn't for her. And she basically was like, you know what, it was fine. It was nice. I told you it was good, but I'm kind of distracted now. We're supposed to be here, doing recon. Like, this is not the time or the place.
I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. Now stop. I need to concentrate. They
had some banter back and forth, and Watson eventually came out, and of course they went in and they saw that it was like a repeat of what happened with her mom, where they went to this facility and you had men missing various body parts. Somebody was missing, I guess that was a kidney or their liver. Somebody was missing an eye. It was just, this time it was different body parts, but same thing.
It's Snowdonian hawkweed.
And B ends up having a flashback of the story that Sherlock told her about this, because it stands out because it was he made a point to say it was the last case that they worked on together.
It's Snowdonian hawkweed.
And so she realizes, she ends up saying the collector is back. So Leo and B are back at the cell with everybody else, and she's basically trying to update them on what's going on. And Leo, his theory is that they're collecting specific body parts because they're trying to build someone or something to that effect.
We think someone is trying to build a whole person out of other people's body parts.
And maybe they didn't get a chance to complete it the first time because the rip closed. And so that's why they're starting back up again.
Whatever power they had to do this, it must have stopped when B and Jesse, when the rip closed for the first time. And Spike ends up turning to Jessie to see if she can go deeper. Of course, she's like, no, I can't do it. I don't want to do it. And she was just like, she just wasn't having it. Then other people started chiming in, and eventually Spike was like, okay, you know what? Fine. Why don't we, B remembered the woman that Sherlock referenced when he sent Watson to find out about this specific plant, Edith Dubois. And so now they're like, okay, well, maybe if our only other recourse is to go find her to see what she could tell us about what's going on, and to tell us what she knows about Watson. And Billy, so he said, so Spike sent Leo to find out what he can about Edith, and basically Billy was like, I just don't want to be bothered with this. I don't want to do this. It's enough of y'all can do it without me. And so of course they're standing there confused, like what has gotten into him, because of course he's still reeling from the conversation he had with Vic the night before.
Yeah, I'm not interested, mate. I've got things to do, and there's enough of you without me to deal with it.
And so he storms out, and eventually B basically goes after him. And so now Spike and Jessie gets into it because she was upset that he would even ask. I'm like, it's Jessie, you kind of want to relate to her, but at the same time her character is kind of annoying as shit. It's like, girl, like what do you expect them to do? But anywho, so she got mad at Spike for even thinking about that. He knows how much it freaks her out, and she basically said that she's not going either. So at this point, Billy is saying he's out, Jessie is saying she's out, and Leo is on his way to find out what he can hand about Edith Dubois. So B catches up with Billy, and he eventually tells her what's going on. Spike had already, kind of filled her in on what was going on, and of course he was upset about that. And she basically had to remind him, like, Spike is your family. He's worried about you. That's why he told us. Like he didn't tell us to hurt you. And so he eventually talked about the conversation that he had with Vic, and of course she was like, it's a strong possibility that he's lying. And then he ends up saying that he went to the workhouse and was able to see the records, and it's true.
Went down to the workhouse and check the records.
Bill.
And of course he talked about what happened then, and how he wasn't able to protect them, and
she was like, you know, you were a child. You know, there was never any expectation for you to be able to protect us in that way.
Your kids aren't supposed to protect people. They're supposed to be protected.
And so she basically told him that, you know, she doesn't want him to do something that he's gonna regret, because, you know, she's telling me, like, I know that you're strong. We know, and we need you. And, you know, basically, she doesn't want anything to happen to him. And so she ends up convincing him to stay. So Leo is on his way to Records, I guess, to find out about Edith Dubois. He ends up seeing some guy from the palace because he saw the way the guy was dressed, and so he did a quick UE and then running back, going into this the nearest pub. But of course, Daimler is in there, and he's basically talking to him about London, how there's no place in the world like it, and they talked, and of course Leo is upset. And he is basically saying, okay, so is my mother upset that I'm gone? And then he could tell by Demi's response that he never even told the Queen that her son was somewhere on the streets of London. And basically the conversation ended with Leo saying that he's going to return to the palace if and when he feels like it.
If I wish to return to the palace, I will do so as and when I please.
And basically there's not a damn thing you can do about it. And so he walked out, and Daimler is now sitting there like, okay, I mean, what else is he going to do? He's the prince, so it's not like he can like accost him, like, especially in, you know, it's you know, his hands are kind of tied, so he has to find another way to remedy the situation. So in the next scene, Sherlock is home, and Jessie ends up, she turns up, and he's trying to figure out, like, how did you get in? And I forget how she explained how she got in the house, and she is asking for his help. And initially, you know, he wasn't really trying to help her. He's not really trying to go down that road again. Then, you know, she started talking about her nightmares, about the circles, and about the person in the mask and the bodies. And from what she told him, he could deduce that it was a plague doctor. They used to wear those masks, which I don't know why I didn't make the connection earlier. During the plague, and so obviously it was to protect them from the folks, the air, bodily fluids as they were treating people.
Well, you're seeing a plague doctors. They wore masks like that during the Black Death.
And then he deduced that it was the circle could be in reference to a plague pit. I'm assuming that's where they dump the bodies of the dead. Well, hopefully they were. I'm assuming that's what. And so of course there are several of them around London. So B, Spike, Leo, and Billy, they end up going, they found Edith Dubois' address, they end up going to her house. They found out that her home had already been broken into. They could see that it had been ransacked, so somebody was clearly looking for something.
11 Colbert Gardens, Edith Dubois.
Looks like someone's already beaten us to it.
For some odd reason, they was able to go, you know, they searched the house, and I believe it was Billy that found the diary that was sitting on a table. So if that was, I'm confused like why they had to sit the house up. But anywho, they found it, and so it was documenting her husband's illness. Her husband had contracted some type of illness, and basically I think his body was kind of like shutting down little by little. And so she started talking about, she was recording his illnesses and how she was treating him, and she's basically saying that she's preserving him until she can, what was the term, recraft him.
I keep his body cool to preserve what is left of him, and then I use nature to recraft him.
And so they were able to make the connection between, you know, what they were able to, you know, read in the diary, that she's a collector. She's been the person taking these parts for years now, trying to recraft her dying dead husband. And so now they're trying to figure out where would she be, where would she be able to keep him. And so B remembered that this particular flower or plant has to be kept in a specific kind of climate. It requires a lot, and so they realized that botanical gardens. So So they end up going to the botanical gardens, and eventually they see her. She has her husband. He's all pieced up, and she's they even made it a point to focus on that green serum, that green liquid, whatever that was, that Atlas found during the first, I guess, go around with her collecting body parts. And she was almost using that to like seal his wounds, his sutures, like wherever she would connect. I guess it did something. And so they obviously, they walked in, and she started talking about basically was telling her that it was over, and she was like, it is over, but not in the way that you think. Basically, I'm finished and I'm ready to bring him back.
It is over, but not for the reason that you think.
Or, I guess, because he was still alive. He was just unconscious. She kept him in a vegetative state. So she's ready to, I guess, wake him up. And she ends up injecting him, and he aroused briefly, and then he collapsed. And of course she is upset, and because she's done all this work, and she feels like at this point she's failed. And so we flash back to Jesse and Sherlock, and of course he's still trying to think about referencing the circles. He said that there's a plague pit under the London Library, and they have a room called the Circle Room.
I know there's a plague pit underneath the London Library. The reading room there is called the Circle Room.
And so that's, I guess, where they decided to start looking. So back at this, it's flashing back and forth between Jesse and Sherlock and the rest of them at the Botanical Gardens. So they're back at the Botanical Gardens, and they're now talking to her about Watson. They want to know what she knows about Watson, and they're saying, she was basically saying, I don't really care what you've done. Like, she has no interest in turning her in. At least this is what she's telling her. And she was like, wow, you hate him almost as much as I do. He said, here, I thought you came to save him.
You hate him almost as much as I do. And I thought you were all here to save him.
And then they was confused, like, save him. And then they started hearing this clanging and banging in the back. And they end up going to a back room, and she got him tied to a chair. So Jesse and Sherlock arrive at the London Library, and they go into the room, and she didn't claim to not feel anything. And to be perfectly honest, it didn't seem like she was really trying to. Like, she's really not trying to do it. So it didn't seem like she put forth much of an effort. And so he was like, wait a minute, there's something wrong here. Like, there's something should be here. And he's asking her to try again. She kind of snaps on him, like, I already told you there's nothing here.
Just close your eyes. Take a breath. Just.
It's not here. I just told you.
And then he basically said, okay, fine, I'm done. So he storms out. So Edith starts telling them the backstory of her and Watson. So she was saying how when her husband got ill, once she gave up on science, she turned to the occult. And then it flashed to a scene where Watson and Sherlock, they were with, I guess, the Golden Dawn, some of that group, and they're sitting, talking about some theories and throwing some stuff around. And one of the women, and there was a woman in the group that invited him to come to, I guess, their location to have a talk or something, or to do a seance or something to that effect. And of course Watson chimed in, basically saying that he is too busy to engage in that. And eventually Sherlock ends up chiming in and saying that, don't be a party pooper. And he ends up calling him, ended up insulting him to a certain extent, like, you have to forgive him, he's not as adept at such things. Basically saying he's not as intelligent, and so, which of course offended him. But as you know, there's a knock at the door, and he obviously goes to see who's arriving. and it was Edith, and she had initially came to talk with Sherlock, but of course now Watson felt like he had something to prove, and so of course he told her he was busy, but he offered his help. And she ends up, piquing his interest by saying that she has found something that may be a connection to the other side or something to that effect. And so, of course, he's like, okay, tell me more. So she's saying that she found this relic, and he ends up, at this point, he came over to her house. It's the next day. Actually, I don't know the time frame, but it's daylight at this point. And she showed him the relic. And he was asking her, like, how do you know this is real? And she's saying that, I spent every dime that we had. And her husband is not too far away. He's in a wheelchair. And he's listening to this conversation. And so he ends up opening this thing. And you see this light reflecting in his eyes.
So, what do we do?
Which looks a lot like the light you see when these powers are being bestowed upon in these certain individuals. And so, of course, he was like, well, I need to take it to study. And her husband, who at this point he couldn't, he's no longer verbal, he can't speak. He can, but not very well. He was able to say no a couple of times, but she was desperate. And Watson offered her hope, and against her better judgment, she allowed him to take it to study it. And she basically said that she never heard from him again. And then you see the next scene where he opens this thing. You see this light reflecting in his eyes. He says some incantation. At this point, he's in the woods. And so, next thing you know, you see this huge light. Just at this point, he's almost glowing. This thing is radiating off of him. So she started talking about how she did what the rest of the people did, where she used the spirit board. She was able to get these powers. She was suddenly able to understand, plants and how to mix them to make, certain things. Basically, it afforded her the ability to do what she was able to do, which is to piece together her husband.
I suddenly had the power to understand plants on a molecular level.
And eventually, a few months later, Watson ends up showing up, asking her, what she's been up to. And she was like, well, what have you been up to? Because she hadn't seen him since he basically stole this relic that she wanted to use to help her husband.
What have you been doing, Edith?
Could ask you the same question.
And she, at this point, I'm assuming this is when Watson sent him to find out about that plant. And so she basically told him that she's not going to tell him anything, and that if he ever says anything, that she's going to be the one to tell him how he took that relic, and he basically tore a hole in the world. And so you find out that Watson was responsible for the rip the last time that happened the last time, which made sense because when he did the incantation, he was in the woods, so that made sense.
And if you say one word, I'll tell them that you took that relic, blew a hole in the side of the universe.
So at this point, of course, B is pissed off. He was like, well, it was you the whole time. You were the reason that my mother died.
It was you all along. You opened the rip that killed my mom.
And he, was like, it was a mistake. He was trying to prove something, and he didn't think things would happen the way they did. And he was trying to find another alternative, and how he threw the relic in the Thames. And so basically, he's saying that yes, I'm responsible for the first time, but I have nothing to do with what's going on now. And so while they're going back and forth, Eda basically said, if y'all don't shut the hell up, I'm killing all of y'all right now. So they turn around.
Nobody move! If I drop this, you all die.
And she got a vial of this green stuff. And they're like, okay. So Jessie and Sherlock, she's still trying to catch up with him. And he's basically, she basically asked him why is he refusing to help her, and he eventually admitted that because he's not the man that he once was, and basically it's frustrating for him, and that's basically he's not a help to anyone.
Because I'm not who I used to be. That's why.
And she ends up telling him that I didn't expect you to be brilliant. I just wanted you to work with me to help me.
I didn't need you to be brilliant. I just needed you to fight with me.
And then she ends up calling him a coward. And he's like, I can't believe that you have the gall to call me a coward when locked inside your head is a way to stop all of this, but you're too afraid to find the answers. And so he basically saying that the streets are wild and that she needed to get off the streets. And so eventually shots rang out. Something happened. So of course everybody starts running in that direction to find out what's going on. He basically told her to get off the streets, and he went in the house and closed the door. I'm like, okay, I mean, I get it, but she's still your daughter. He was like, girl, get on out, go on home. And yeah. And so she so back at the Botanical Gardens, Edith is, basically talking to John, and she was like, do you ever wonder why I never killed you? And basically she was saying that I basically kept you around just in case I needed spare parts. She's like, I didn't know if I was going to need a heart. I didn't know if I was going to need some nerves. I just didn't know. So, I mean, that's pretty much the only reason that you're still alive. So it's like, spare parts, Watson, Dr. Watson, okay.
Why do you think I didn't kill you when I found you snooping around? I've been thinking for a while that I might need to replace his heart.
And, she basically said that she's sorry that that they got caught up in this, and she put her little mask on, and she was about to drop the vial, but she was like, you know what, I never believed that she wasn't going to turn me in, because that's what Bee was trying to tell her, like, I'm not going to turn you in, I just want answers. And so she put the mask on, and just as she was about to drop this vial, I guess that was going to release this toxin that was going to kill all of them, her husband roused.
You won't feel it, Bull.
And so now she's like, oh, okay, it worked. So now she's going over to I guess comfort him, to see how he's doing, I guess. So he eventually, sat up, and he started saying he was like 15. And she was like, because it's been 15 years basically that she's had him in this, I guess, vegetative state or whatever. And she thought that he was going to be grateful. And he was like, it's been 50, you kept me trapped here for 15 years.
15 years. You trapped me here.
And basically, how dare you steal my death from me? So of course he ends up killing her. And then they was like, okay, he's strong enough to kill all. He can take all of them out with one hand tied behind his back. And so now they're like, we need to get out of here. Of course, you still got Watson tied to this chair. He's like begging them not to leave him. So they eventually untie him, and they get out. And so the husband, he wasn't even concerned about them. He just wanted it to be over. And so he ends up drinking that green liquid to end it all. So he'd already killed her, and now he's like, finally, I'm going to be dead this time, and I'm going to stay dead. So Jesse is talking to the linen man again. He's still on the ship on his way there. And he was basically telling her that he was, causing issues, causing a rift between her and the rest of the group, basically saying that, I told you that, they don't understand, and how you've outgrown them.
They don't understand you anymore, Jesse, because you've outgrown them.
And so he's still like manipulating her, thinking, having her think that these people are just using her and just out to hurt her, despite the fact that she can see what's going on around her and she knows what's going on. So I'm still befuddled as to how this even makes sense. But anywho, so now they're back I think they're at a pub, and so they're sitting talking, and B is like, okay, well, Watson was our only lead. They really thought that he would be the answers to, or they may get some answers about how to deal with this current situation. And now, after finding out that he was responsible for the first situation, but he has no clue what's going on now, there's still somebody out there that's making this happen, and they don't really know what to do at this point. So B ends up going back to the cellar, and she ends up seeing a shadow of a guy. And so you realize that it's Daimler. And so you kind of saw this coming. So he ends up saying to her, I have some information for you that I think you're going to find very interesting.
I have information for you. Information I think you'll find very interesting.
So Leo eventually arrives at the cellar, and she basically demands answers from him. Like, I want to know who you are, and I want to know who you are right now.
You have 5 seconds to tell me who you are.
So, while this is going on, Spike and Billy, they're in the alley somewhere, and they're just talking. And Billy ended up apologizing for what happened before when they were outside Vic's house. And then Spike went somewhere, I can't remember. And the next you know, old Vic shows up, and for some reason decided he's going to antagonize Billy into a fight. And Billy tried to walk away. He's like, he wasn't trying to fight him. He really wasn't trying to get into it. And so it's flashing back and forth between this and B and Leo in the cellar. And Leo started talking about how it wasn't a game for him, and how he's never had a group of friends like any type of relationships like the ones he's basically had with them. And she was basically like, okay, so did we give you what you need, or did I give you what you need? Of course, at this point she feels used. She's been lied to all this time.
And tell me, did we give you what you needed? Did I give you what you needed?
And she's just she's done, and she basically told him that she wanted him to leave. So we flash back to Vic and Billy in the alley, and he's already hit Billy. He's really trying to goad him into fighting. Billy's really not trying to fight. He's mad because I don't know if somebody contacted him after Billy went to the workhouse to do research on his background. He didn't mention that, and then he starts telling him how you know how I know your name is Billy. It's because I named you. I was given the privilege of naming all the unwanted children that came there. And so he's really like rubbing it in, right? And starts talking about this is what happens when you have a boy that's raised without a father. He's a wimp.
The trouble is with boys without dads, they don't learn how to be real men.
And at this point, Billy's still on the ground because he had hit him a couple of times. And so Billy ends up standing up and hit him with a 1, 2, 3 haymaker, 2-piece with a biscuit and a soda on the side. And he is now out cold, but he's not moving. So Billy's now standing there, and he's looking at him, and it's like, okay, is he dead? Is he not? Eventually, at this point, nobody's in the damn alley. After this fight takes place, next thing you know, you hear somebody say, he's not moving, he's dead. Somebody call the police. So it's like, oh hell, what the hell? What's going on? So Jessie finally made it back to the cell, and of course B was asking her where did she go, and eventually she ends up having to ask the tough question because she's not really dealing with the fact that she plays a key role in what's going on here, and she can't just tap out. Too many lives are at stake. And so she eventually gets around to asking her if she can go deeper. And then, of course, she's like, I can't believe you would ask me to do that.
Only one that can stop this, and all you've got to do is just go deeper into your night. I can't believe you, of all people.
I thought you understood. And, of course, B is like, I do understand, but I also, there's a lot more at stake here. And she ends up telling her that I do get it, but, at some point, you're going to have to grow up. Like, seriously.
I thought you would understand. I do understand, Jess, but that doesn't mean I can't be honest with you. That doesn't mean that I don't think you have to grow up a bit.
Eventually, obviously they have a disagreement, and Jessie storms out. Now you have Leo. So then you flash to Leo. Leo ends up, he didn't have anywhere else to go, so he ends up having to go back to the palace. Of course, he is not happy. Now, at this point, he doesn't know that Daimler said something to, at least I don't think he knew something, that Daimler said something to B at this point, but it is what it is. They flash to Billy. Billy is in jail. And so Jessie is now kind of walking, you know, to nowhere in particular. And next, you know, she comes to the ship, and there are bodies everywhere. The ship is, you know, it's run aground. And you see this woman saying that they're all dead, and you see these bodies, they're just all over the place. And then next thing you know, you see old Linen Man in his white suit there, stepping out from behind the carriage. He called Jessie over, and of course she ran over to hug him, like, you know, like they old friends, right? And so she was trying to figure out, okay, so what happened? Like, how are these people dead and you still in your pristine white suit? Which would have been my question, but of course she's not that astute, you know, Jessie. Like, what's going on? Anyway, so she ends up telling him that, you know, that he was right, and how that she couldn't you know, do it anymore, and he basically, and how, you know, she, you know, still working on trying to find this rip so they can close it. And then of course, who are you surprised? He's like, well, I don't really want to close it. And so she was like, what are you talking about?
I don't want to close it.
What?
And then he says that, you know, he ends up calling her weak, and he ends up removing that butterfly tattoo that he we're gonna call it a tattoo that he put on her wrist to help her come out of nightmares. And it seems like he at this point has trapped her in a nightmare. So you see her now in the tunnel, and of course she doesn't have any light, and she is scared to death. And that is pretty much how this episode ends. So yeah, so there's that. So I am going to end this here, and I will talk to you guys later.